The USS Enterprise D moves through calm, unbroken space, its mission quiet and predictable. Nothing in the vast stillness gives warning of what is about to strike. Then the fabric of reality shudders. A tremor ripples through the ship's sensors, and alarms erupt across multiple decks as the laws of physics twist in on themselves. In 10 forward, glasses rattle, lights flicker, and an unnatural chill spreads through the room. At the center of the floor, a spiraling green vortex tears open, swirling with chaotic energy that seems alive and aware. Crew members stumble back as the vortex expands, pulsing brighter and louder, until at last it collapses in a single burst of light. When the glow fades, a figure lies sprawled on the deck, tall, armored in emerald and gold, a staff gripped tightly in one hand as if even unconscious he refuses to release power. He is injured but not defeated. A slow, confident smirk curves across his face, a smile that holds danger, mischief, and amusement all at once. The narrator reveals the name that freezes the room: Loki, God of Mischief, enemy of the Avengers, a being whose schemes have shaken realms far beyond human understanding, and now he is loose aboard the Enterprise. His unexpected arrival shatters the calm mission and instantly sets the stage for a collision between Starfleet's commitment to reason and diplomacy and the unpredictable chaos embodied by a master trickster from another universe. The moment he appears, the quiet voyage ends and a far more dangerous journey begins. Security teams flood into 10 forward within seconds, phasers drawn, forming a protective perimeter around the fallen stranger. Worf advances first, every instinct alert, while Riker positions himself at the center of the response, directing officers with practiced calm. Dr. Crusher and her medical staff push through the crowd, tricorders raised, trying to determine whether this new arrival is injured, dangerous, or both. Before anyone can fully assess him, Loki's eyes snap open. His recovery is unnaturally swift. He pushes himself up on one elbow, letting his expression falter just enough to appear weak and disoriented. With a soft groan, he touches his head as if recovering from trauma. The act is deliberate, calculated. He watches every reaction around him with sharp intelligence hidden behind feigned confusion. He mutters about a collapse, a failure, a broken bridge between realms. His voice trembles at the right moments, suggesting vulnerability without truly displaying it. He offers just enough truth to sound convincing, yet every detail is shaped to make him appear as a victim of circumstance rather than the architect of chaos he truly is. Picard enters 10 forward with controlled authority, his presence shifting the entire room. He studies Loki with a commander's eye, recognizing the potential danger but refusing to let fear dictate his actions. Instead of treating Loki as an enemy, he approaches this encounter as a first-contact situation, measured, methodical, and guided by Starfleet principles. As the captain questions him with calm precision, Loki maintains his performance. He avoids direct answers, provides vague explanations, and steers the conversation away from anything that might reveal his true intentions. His words drip with charm, his tone softens with manufactured innocence, and each gesture reinforces the illusion that he is lost and harmless. Behind the bar, Guinan watches quietly. She says nothing, but her gaze is steady and piercing. Her centuries of experience allow her to sense things others cannot, and what she perceives in Loki unsettles her. Beneath his smile lies an ancient presence, old as myths and twice as dangerous. She recognizes the familiar pattern of someone who bends truth as easily as breathing. This moment establishes Loki's place aboard the Enterprise, a wounded guest who is anything but helpless, a charming arrival whose sincerity cannot be trusted, and a manipulator already shaping the narrative in his favor. The first encounter is complete, but the real game for control has only just begun. The observation lounge feels unusually tense as Loki is escorted inside and directed to sit across from Picard, Data, Troy, and Dr. Crusher. The wide panoramic window behind him frames the stars like silent witnesses to an impossible moment. Loki wears a relaxed expression and a faint smile, as if he is attending a diplomatic dinner rather than being examined by the most advanced scientific minds in the Federation. Yet even seated, there is a sharp alertness in his posture, like a predator choosing not to hunt, at least for now. Data initiates the scans first. His tricorder emits a rapid sequence of tones that rise and fall unpredictably. He tilts his head, the expressionless gesture nonetheless hinting at surprise. What he sees is unlike anything recorded in Starfleet's medical, xenobiological, or energy databases. Loki's cellular structure shifts subtly in real time, oscillating between humanoid patterns and something colder and denser, signatures resembling a frost giant's physiology, though Data has never encountered such a thing directly. Energy radiates around him in unstable currents, bending in defiance of physical laws. Radiation profiles appear and disappear like illusions that somehow exist materially. Dr. Crusher takes her turn and quickly grows frustrated as her readings stutter and reset. Loki watches her struggle and smiles wider, enjoying the disruption. She notes energy fields surrounding his body that refuse to be measured or stabilized, almost as if sensing the instrument's intentions and reacting defensively. Some scans register low-frequency quantum fluctuations. Others detect bursts of exotic particles that should not exist outside high-energy warp experiments. When asked for clarification, Loki waves a hand elegantly and declares that the answer is simple. Magic. The word hangs in the air like a challenge. Data blinks as if processing an error message. Troy watches Loki's emotions swirl beneath the surface, and Picard remains perfectly still, refusing to react. Loki's tone stays light, even playful, but he adds that magic is merely a system of forces and principles operating according to rules that advanced civilizations may someday understand. He offers this explanation not to illuminate but to mystify, leaving room for speculation without surrendering control. The crew begins debating possibilities. Crusher questions whether Loki is simply a highly evolved species capable of manipulating exotic energy fields. Data suggests the energy patterns might be a sophisticated form of quantum manipulation. Troy notes that Loki's emotional signature shifts in tandem with the readings, as if his personality fuels the energy itself. Picard considers whether a civilization might exist that blends advanced science with ritualistic or symbolic frameworks. Loki listens with amusement. Every theory is met with a raised eyebrow or a smirk, but he offers no clear confirmation. He likes existing in the space between definitions. A god, an alien, a hybrid of both, the ambiguity gives him power, and it frustrates the crew, pulling them deeper into the puzzle he represents. In this quiet room, the clash between Starfleet's rational worldview and Loki's chaotic nature begins. Science tries to categorize him, sorcery refuses to be captured. This meeting marks the first step in understanding not just what Loki is, but how he fits into a universe that believes every question has an answer, until now. The atmosphere in the observation lounge grows heavier as Picard shifts the discussion from the nature of Loki's powers to the circumstances surrounding his arrival. Troy studies him carefully, focusing not on his words but on the layered emotions beneath them. What she senses is a complex landscape, arrogance, sharp and glittering like a blade. Beneath that, a deep loneliness, vast and cold as interstellar space. And woven through it all is calculation, constant, fluid, and precise, like an artist painting lies in real time. Picard asks calmly why Loki wishes to return home so urgently and why his bridge between realms collapsed. Loki responds with the practiced elegance of someone who has rehearsed his tragedies for centuries. He speaks of betrayal, hinting at a brother who misunderstood him, a father who judged him too harshly, and a realm that cast him out. He describes a war he claims he tried to prevent, but his warnings were ignored. His voice carries just enough emotion to sound sincere, yet not enough to truly reveal anything. Troy senses that every word contains truth, but only fragments of it. He presents each fact coded in misdirection, painting himself as a misunderstood figure caught in forces beyond his control. When Picard pushes gently for specifics, Loki skillfully redirects the conversation, positioning himself simultaneously as victim and hero while avoiding substantial details. He claims the bridge collapsed due to instability from the conflict he fled, yet Troy feels his emotions spike briefly with guilt, suggesting the collapse may have been his doing. Picard recognizes the pattern. Loki is not lying outright, he is constructing narratives with careful omissions. Picard responds with patient discipline, maintaining the tone of diplomatic inquiry rather than accusation. His steady approach frustrates Loki, who prefers opponents who react emotionally. Yet Picard's calmness also piques Loki's curiosity. The captain is unlike the leaders he has manipulated before, disciplined, principled, and unwilling to be drawn into emotional traps. When Troy asks what he fears will happen if he does not return home, Loki's smile falters for the briefest moment. The mask cracks just enough to reveal a flash of dread, quickly buried beneath charm. He disguises it by joking that realms tend to unravel without their gods, but Troy senses the real fear, judgment, consequences, facing those he has deceived and betrayed. The narrator points out the central tension. Loki's truths are misleading, and his lies are truthful. This complexity makes trust nearly impossible, yet casting him out blindly would violate Starfleet principles. Picard concludes that they must help him, but with constant vigilance. This decision sets the stage for a delicate balance, assisting a being who shifts between sincerity and deceit in every breath. The crew must navigate not just what Loki says, but what he hides. And Loki, realizing he is not as easily manipulated as he expected, grows increasingly intrigued by the people who refuse to fear him. Despite the contradictions in Loki's story, Picard chooses to treat him as a guest rather than a prisoner. Starfleet principles demand compassion even under uncertainty. Loki is assigned quarters under observation, with Worf overseeing security arrangements. The doors are reinforced with adaptive force fields calibrated to neutralize sudden energy spikes. Sensors track biological and power fluctuations. Two security officers remain nearby at all times, instructed not to engage unless necessary. Loki strolls into the quarters with theatrical amusement, noting how much effort the Enterprise invests to appear welcoming while preparing for the worst. He compliments Worf on his vigilance with a tone that sounds sincere but drips with subtle mockery. Worf does not react to the provocation, simply stating that precautions are routine for unknown visitors. Loki's grin widens. He enjoys the Klingon's stoic defiance. Picard's decision to extend monitored hospitality reflects the Federation's core values. Understanding, not fear, drives their actions. Still, every officer involved knows that Loki is no ordinary visitor. His staff is confiscated and placed in a high-security containment field. His abilities remain unquantified, his motives unclear. The ship treats him as an unpredictable anomaly, one requiring both courtesy and readiness. The moment Loki is alone, his expression softens into something sharper, colder. The performative charm fades. He raises a hand and conjures a faint shimmer of green light, an invisible ripple that spreads across the room. It moves through the walls, through the sensors, exploring the limits of the ship's monitoring systems. He tests consoles without touching them, gauges power networks, and even attempts to sense the warp core. The results intrigue him. Starfleet technology does not reject his magic, it interacts with it. Circuits hum with new rhythms when his illusions pass by. Matter responds in ways he did not anticipate. It is not like Asgardian power systems, which are built to coexist with sorcery. Here, his magic finds unfamiliar pathways. Some areas resist him, others amplify his touch unexpectedly. He realizes that with refinement, he might manipulate these systems to his advantage. But more fascinating to him is the challenge. He is used to exploiting fear and chaos. The Enterprise offers neither. Instead, it presents a structured environment governed by discipline and trust, qualities he rarely encounters. This makes it a playground for mischief, but also a puzzle worth solving. As Loki continues probing the ship, Worf watches from the security terminal. He notes fluctuations, minor anomalies in the room's energy patterns, but nothing overtly hostile. Still, he senses that something is happening beyond the monitor's reach. The tension grows subtly, Loki exploring boundaries, Starfleet enforcing them, both learning the other's strengths. This begins the quiet cat-and-mouse game between Loki and the Enterprise, a battle not of weapons, but of awareness, curiosity, and hidden intent. Data visits Loki the next morning, driven not by orders but by curiosity. Loki lounges in a chair with an air of theatrical boredom, but his eyes betray interest when the android enters. Data begins with questions about Loki's abilities, how illusions function, whether shapeshifting is biological or energy-based, and why his body scans fluctuate between humanoid and frost giant forms. Loki answers with a mixture of truth and poetry. Illusions, he says, are crafted from intent and perception. If one reshapes the mind's expectation, the body and world follow. Shapeshifting is both physical and symbolic, a rewriting of form and identity according to one's will. He explains it as though describing art, not science. Data listens intently, parsing every word, attempting to separate metaphor from literal meaning. The conversation shifts when Data asks a philosophical question. If Loki can change his appearance at will, then what is his true form? Loki's posture stiffens. He deflects with sarcasm, claiming that true form is irrelevant for beings of higher nature. But Data presses gently, explaining that as an android seeking humanity, he believes identity is shaped by consistent choices and values, not just physical structure. Something subtle moves behind Loki's expression. Data's perspective unsettles him. Loki has spent lifetimes hiding behind illusions, masks, and roles: prince, villain, god, exile. Hearing someone without ego question, the idea of self forces him to confront the emptiness he hides behind charm. He counters by mocking Data's quest for authenticity. How can an artificial construct claim to seek a true identity? Is not Data himself shaped by programming, expectations, and imitation? Yet as Loki speaks, his voice wavers slightly. The mockery is defensive, not cruel. Data's calm replies dismantle Loki's deflection. Data says that identity is chosen, not predetermined. Even an android can grow beyond what he was made to be. Loki falls silent. For the first time, he appears reflective rather than performative. He realizes Data's words cut to the heart of his deepest struggle, worthiness not in power, but in embracing who he truly is. This exchange deepens the theme running through the story. It is not Loki's magic or strength that defines him, but the fractured identity he carries. Data offers a mirror, showing him what he fears most, that his deception is not a strategy, but a shield against confronting his own pain. This talk becomes a pivotal moment, planting a seed of self-awareness that will challenge Loki later when greater choices arise. Later, Loki wanders the Enterprise in a harmless disguise, an ordinary crew member's uniform, face altered, posture humble. He explores corridors and engineering bays, observing routines and interactions. His illusions are flawless to most eyes, blending him seamlessly into the flow of ship life. But when he enters 10 forward, the illusion drops in Guinan's perception instantly. She calls him by his true name without raising her voice. Loki freezes, surprised. Few beings ever pierce his illusions so effortlessly. She gestures for him to sit, and he does, curiosity overriding pride. She pours him a drink without asking his preference, as if she already knows what he will accept. Their conversation begins quietly. Guinan asks what he is really planning, not with suspicion, but with calm certainty that he has a plan at all. Loki tries deflecting with humor, claiming he merely seeks entertainment in a boring universe. Guinan counters that boredom is rarely the reason powerful, wounded beings wander among strangers. She sees into him with a clarity that unsettles him. She speaks of the weight of living in someone else's shadow, of the pain of being misunderstood, of the hunger to be seen and valued. Loki's smile slips. He resents how easily she reads him, yet he is drawn to her presence, non-judgmental, steady, ancient. For the first time since arriving, Loki lowers his guard. He admits, without fully confessing, that his life has been defined by comparison, by a brother who received praise while he received suspicion. His mischief began as rebellion but grew into habit, then identity. Guinan listens without pity, only empathy. She warns him that on the Enterprise, choices matter. Manipulation may work for a moment, but the consequences will follow him, shaping who he becomes. If he continues choosing deceit, he will become the very thing he fears, a creature trapped by its own lies. This conversation plants something inside Loki he does not want to acknowledge. Guinan becomes a quiet mirror for his moral conflict, sensing the path he walks and the path he could choose instead. Their meeting ends with a simple truth that lingers in his mind long after he leaves. On this ship, honesty is strength, not weakness. And for a trickster shaped by lies, that realization begins to fracture his certainty about who he is and who he wants to be. The bridge hums with quiet routine when Data's console emits a sharp, irregular chirp. He pauses mid-sentence, tilting his head as streams of sensor data scroll rapidly before him. Something flickers at the edge of detection, not solid enough to classify, but too deliberate to ignore. Picard immediately senses the shift in Data's posture and steps closer, hands clasped behind his back, ready for the unexpected. Data announces the presence of a cloaked vessel trailing the Enterprise at a distance just outside typical engagement range. The signal is faint, nearly masked by natural spatial interference, but not faint enough. Riker moves to tactical with the speed of instinct, requesting magnified sensor sweeps. Worf's jaw tightens as he monitors the readings, recognizing a familiar pattern in the disrupted neutrino trails. Cloaking signatures such as these belong unmistakably to the Romulans. As Worf confirms this, the tension on the bridge increases. Riker demands to know why a Romulan ship would shadow a Federation vessel during a peaceful diplomatic route, but Data, still analyzing, raises a disturbing possibility. The scans from the Romulan ship appear focused not on the Enterprise itself, but on the lingering ripples in subspace, the aftershocks of the green vortex that brought Loki aboard. Those readings, while faint, carry a unique signature unlike any warp phenomenon. To a power hungry for strategic advantages, the energy pattern of Loki's arrival would stand out like a beacon. The Romulans, always watchful for anomalies that could give them leverage, have detected something extraordinary, and now they are following it. Picard realizes the gravity of the situation immediately. A being with Loki's abilities, illusions, reality manipulation, shapeshifting, unknown energy fields, would be a priceless asset to any military empire. If the Romulans believe the Enterprise has acquired such a being, diplomatic tensions could shift dangerously. Worse, they might attempt to seize Loki by force or engineer a crisis that forces Starfleet into a compromised position. The narrator highlights the growing pressure. Loki's mere presence aboard the Enterprise transforms the ship into a target, a prize in a political struggle not of their making. What began as an internal mystery has now become an external threat. Troy quietly senses the rising anxiety across the bridge, mirroring her own internal concern. She warns that the Romulans rarely shadow without purpose, and their interest in Loki could escalate quickly. Picard considers immediate evasive maneuvers but rejects them. Running would imply guilt. Confrontation would risk provocation. For now, observation and caution must prevail. The Enterprise alters course subtly, testing whether the Romulan vessel responds. It does. The faint cloaked signature shifts in parallel, confirming its intentions beyond doubt. They are tracking Loki's arrival, perhaps believing the Enterprise intends to weaponize or conceal him. This development shifts the narrative tone. The threat is no longer Loki alone, nor is it the internal strain of managing a trickster god. The stakes now involve geopolitical forces. Loki's arrival, chaotic as it was, has drawn the gaze of a rival superpower. The Enterprise must now navigate the danger of being caught between an unpredictable trickster and an enemy eager to exploit him. As Picard orders heightened alert and continuous monitoring, the invisible Romulan vessel remains a silent predator in the dark, waiting for an opportunity. And everyone on the bridge knows, one misstep could ignite a conflict none of them are prepared for. When Picard enters Loki's quarters, he finds the trickster lounging comfortably, legs crossed, hands folded in mock innocence, as if expecting the captain and already planning the terms of their conversation. Loki greets him with a tone that walks a line between politeness and mockery, claiming he was wondering how long it would take before someone sought his insight. Picard remains composed, refusing to be drawn into Loki's theatrics. Picard explains the situation with precision. A cloaked Romulan ship is following the Enterprise. Their scans are focused on the anomaly that brought Loki aboard. The Federation cannot allow Loki's presence to endanger diplomatic stability or compromise the ship. Picard emphasizes that any misuse of his abilities could escalate tensions and risk war. Loki listens with an amused expression, as though the possibility of sparking interstellar conflict is an entertaining side effect rather than a deterrent. Instead of acknowledging the danger he represents, Loki leans forward with casual confidence and offers what he calls a simple solution. His powers, he explains, could help them neutralize the Romulans with ease. He can cast illusions to make the Enterprise appear elsewhere, create sensor phantoms to confuse their tracking, or even subtly sabotage the Romulan ship without ever being detected. His tone is smooth and persuasive, presenting manipulation as strategy and deception as diplomacy. In return for this assistance, Loki makes his demands. He wants unrestricted access to the ship, freedom to move without guards, free access to certain computer systems, and permission to study the ship's technology as he pleases. To Loki, these requests are reasonable, a fair exchange of services. To Picard, they are serious breaches of security. Picard rejects the proposal immediately and firmly. Trust cannot be bought or negotiated under duress. It must be earned through consistent choices, not through displays of power or manipulation. The captain stands unwavering, stating that Starfleet will not compromise its principles, even in the face of external threats. Loki's pleasant demeanor fractures briefly. His smile tightens, his eyes harden. The veneer of charming cooperation masks a rising irritation, resentment that the Enterprise refuses to bend to his will. He accuses Picard of hypocrisy, suggesting that the captain's noble ideals are simply another mask, no different from Loki's illusions. Yet Picard remains steady. This conversation deepens Loki's internal conflict. For the first time, he encounters a leader who cannot be bribed, bullied, or dazzled. Picard's refusal, instead of discouraging Loki, pushes him further into unpredictable emotional territory. He begins to see the Enterprise not just as a ship, but as a stage on which he can test its inhabitants and himself. This moment becomes a turning point. Loki's resentment grows, but so does his curiosity. Denied the chance to prove his worth through manipulation, he turns instead to mischief as a way to reassert control, and the Enterprise is about to feel the consequences. Loki begins subtly, almost playfully. His mischief starts as a whisper, a faint ripple through the ship's pristine order. While walking the corridors, officers occasionally see their own reflections behave a split second out of sync, creating a momentary sense of unease. A pair of ensigns passes one another, and for an instant sees duplicates of each other walking in the opposite direction. A helmsman briefly glimpses Picard stepping off the turbolift, only to see the real Picard enter from the opposite side a moment later. These illusions are harmless, passing quickly enough to be dismissed as stress or fatigue, but they plant seeds of doubt. Starfleet officers pride themselves on discipline and rationality. Loki's magic quietly undermines their sense of stability, forcing them to question whether their senses or the ship itself can be trusted. Next, Loki shifts to manipulating the environment. Doors open into the wrong rooms for 2 or 3 seconds at a time, a corridor leading suddenly into engineering, a sickbay door opening into a holodeck simulation before snapping back to normal. These glitches create confusion without causing lasting damage, but they demonstrate how easily Loki can bend reality to his amusement. In engineering, a set of tools rearrange themselves when no one is looking. A diagnostics display reverses text for a moment before correcting itself. A warp core readout shows impossible fluctuations that vanish upon a second glance. Geordi becomes increasingly frustrated as the phenomena defy all logic or physics he understands. Worf, leading security, treats each disturbance as sabotage. He mobilizes his officers, scanning for energy signatures, running shipwide diagnostics, and checking for Romulan interference. He suspects Loki immediately but cannot gather tangible evidence, fueling his determination rather than easing it. His tactical instincts war against the lack of physical threats, making him more alert, more suspicious, more prepared for something larger to come. Loki observes the reactions with growing fascination. He watches how officers manage stress, who remains calm under pressure, and who falters. He studies how the crew works together, how they uphold their values even when confused or uncertain. This is not merely mischief, it is experimentation. He wants to know how far he can push before the Federation's famed discipline cracks. The mischief escalates slightly. During a senior staff meeting, the lights briefly flicker, and for 1 second, every officer sees a different version of the room, some with walls bending inward, others with floating objects, and one where a shadowy figure stands behind Picard, whispering. The illusions dissolve instantly, but the impact remains. Loki's capabilities are no longer theoretical, they are felt. Picard knows the source, even without proof. He warns the crew to remain steady and refuses to retaliate prematurely, understanding that confrontation without understanding will only escalate Loki's behavior. But he also begins preparing for the uncomfortable truth. The Enterprise is being tested by someone who thrives on cracking foundations. Loki, meanwhile, feels excitement building. The Enterprise is not breaking, but it is reacting. And for someone who has spent centuries underestimated, this controlled chaos is intoxicating. Just as the tension aboard the Enterprise nears its breaking point, time itself shudders. A strange silence falls over the ship. Officers freeze mid-motion, data streams lock in place, and even the ambient hum of the engines falls still. The ship becomes a tableau of suspended life. Loki stands in a corridor when reality shifts. His eyes narrow as he senses a presence, older, stranger, and mischievous in a way that feels uncomfortably familiar. A bright flash illuminates the corridor, and suddenly Q lounges in midair, legs crossed, floating casually as though perched on an invisible throne. He looks Loki up and down with amused delight, a trickster god from another universe climbing around his favorite starship, irresistible. Q introduces himself in dramatic fashion, exaggerating flourishes purely for his own entertainment. Loki responds with skepticism and thinly veiled disdain. He recognizes power when he sees it, but Q's arrogance grates on him immediately. Q circles Loki with predatory curiosity. He calls Loki a lesser cousin of the continuum, a being dabbling in illusions rather than truly shaping existence. Loki fires back, highlighting Q's childish theatrics and pointing out that omnipotence wielded without purpose lacks dignity. Their banter becomes a duel, sharp as blades yet wrapped in smiles. To punctuate his superiority, Q snaps his fingers. A miniature star forms in his hand, burning bright enough to cast shadows. Loki counters by conjuring an illusion of Q as a court jester ringing a bell. Q bursts into laughter, unimpressed but delighted by the defiance. Picard, frozen moments before, suddenly resumes motion as Q chooses to unfreeze only the command crew. Confusion flashes across Picard's face as he registers the confrontation. Q greets him with theatrical exasperation, complaining that the Enterprise has become a magnet for dramatic strays from other universes. He points to Loki with mock frustration, accusing him of being reckless, unstable, and self-indulgent, traits Q claims as his own domain. Loki bristles at the insinuation that he is merely a lesser version of Q. He asserts that his power is rooted in identity, culture, and struggle, not frivolity. Their duality becomes clear. Q's chaos is born from boredom, Loki's from pain. As they face each other, the air crackles, not with energy, but with the suggestion of two cosmic forces taking each other's measure. Q realizes Loki is not just another plaything. There is depth, contradiction, and longing twisted into his very essence. Loki sees Q as a mirror of what he might become if he allowed his power to eclipse purpose. For the first time, Q grows serious. He recognizes Loki as a wildcard who could unravel or elevate everything around him, and with that realization, he decides to test him. Q snaps his fingers, transporting himself and Loki to the dark vacuum of space, though both remain comfortably able to breathe. The Enterprise floats nearby, frozen mid-motion like a sculpture. Q's tone becomes softer, almost conspiratorial. He offers Loki something deceptively simple, a shortcut to everything he desires. He tells Loki he can send him home instantly. Not just home, but restored, feared no longer, beloved once more, welcomed as a hero instead of a villain. Q promises to repair Loki's past mistakes, rewrite memories of those who despised him, and reshape his future as a figure of triumph. For someone whose life has been defined by longing for validation, the offer strikes directly at Loki's deepest wounds. But Q's gift comes with a condition. Loki must betray the Enterprise. He must allow Q to claim the crew for his experiments, a morality study, as Q calls it, to explore the boundaries of Starfleet ethics under pressure. Loki hesitates. The Enterprise, with all its order and ideals, frustrates him. Yet the crew has shown him more tolerance and curiosity than most realms ever did. They tried to understand him instead of fearing or condemning him. Loki's mind races. The chance to return home as a hero is almost unbearable in its appeal. To be respected, admired, perhaps even loved. To erase the humiliation of being second, the bitterness of years spent in shadows. Q's offer tempts the part of Loki that aches for redemption without effort, forgiveness without accountability. He looks toward the frozen Enterprise. He remembers Picard's unshakable calm, Data's genuine curiosity, Troy's empathy, Geordi's patience, Guinan's piercing insight. And in that moment, he faces the truth. Taking Q's deal would mean repeating the oldest pattern of his life, sacrificing others for his own ego. For the first time in a long time, Loki steps away from the easy path. He refuses. The decision surprises Q, it surprises even Loki. Q studies him with renewed interest, noting that somewhere between mischief and manipulation, Loki has changed, just enough to question himself, just enough to turn down the very thing he always thought he wanted. Q smiles, not mockingly, but with something like respect. Loki has passed the test. And now the story shifts toward a new challenge, because Q never intervenes without purpose, and the consequences of Loki's choice will decide the fate of everyone aboard the Enterprise. When Q snaps reality back into motion, the Enterprise jolts subtly as though waking from a strange dream. Officers resume mid-sentence, consoles continue their beeping, and the ship's heartbeat returns to its steady hum. Only Loki remains still, eyes lingering on the spot where Q vanished with a cryptic remark about potential wasted on self-pity. The words cling to him longer than he wants to admit. He does not share what happened with Picard or the crew, not out of deceit, though deception is natural to him, but because he does not yet understand it himself. The temptation Q presented, the offer of restored glory and rewritten history, still echoes inside him. He refused not out of heroism, but because something in him shifted, quietly, unexpectedly, like a door unlocking inside a room he never dared enter. From that moment on, Loki's behavior changes, not dramatically, but subtly, like currents beneath calm water. He still lies, but the lies no longer feel aimed at destruction. He still jokes, but there is less sharpness in the humor. He still wears masks, but they are worn from habit, not desperation. Most notably, he begins observing the crew with an attention that borders on fascination. He watches how Riker defends Picard without hesitation, not because he is commanded to, but because trust binds them. He watches Worf follow rules he dislikes because discipline matters to him more than comfort. He watches Troi show compassion to people who frustrate her. He watches Geordi solve problems not with trickery, but with teamwork. And he watches Picard, steady, principled, patient, making choices based on ethics, not ego. These relationships puzzle Loki. In Asgard, alliances were built on hierarchy, fear, and power. Love existed, but was buried under politics and pride. In Jotunheim, might determined worth. And in his own life, trust was a resource he never truly possessed. He was tolerated, doubted, or used. Yet here aboard the Enterprise, people cooperate without coercion. They trust one another without deception. Their power is not built on dominance, but on unity. Loki finds himself drawn to this unfamiliar dynamic. It stirs something inside him that he has rarely felt, a sense of belonging not granted by bloodline or force, but by choice. The narrator emphasizes this quiet shift. While Loki has not become virtuous or selfless, something within him is changing direction. He begins seeing mischief not as a weapon for control, but as a tool for protection. He recognizes that chaos can shield the innocent as effectively as it can manipulate the guilty. This inner turning point does not absolve his past, nor does it guarantee a better future, but it marks the beginning of something new, a path where Loki might become more than a villain, more than a trickster, more than a shadow of his brother. For the first time, he is curious about who he could be without the chains of expectation and resentment. This quiet transformation lays the foundation for the choices he will soon make, when trickery becomes the only thing standing between the Enterprise and hostile forces lurking in the dark. The tension on the bridge escalates when Worf announces the arrival of 2 additional cloaked signatures. The Romulan vessel tailing them has been joined by reinforcements. Moments later, the 3 ships decloak in a formation that speaks of confidence bordering on arrogance. The green glow of their propulsion systems casts an eerie sheen across the viewscreen. The Romulan commander appears, his posture stiff with feigned civility. He addresses Picard with diplomatic courtesy sharpened into a blade. The Romulans, he claims, detected an extraordinary energy signature, one that suggests an interdimensional traveler. They propose a solution beneficial to all. Loki can join them voluntarily. They promise him safe passage, assistance in returning home, and mutual opportunities to collaborate on operations that would benefit both their empire and, supposedly, Loki. Picard's refusal is instant and unequivocal. Loki is under the protection of the Enterprise, and the Federation will not hand over a guest, no matter how difficult, into the custody of an adversarial power. The Romulan commander's polite mask cracks for a heartbeat before he recovers and states that refusal leaves them no choice. Before anyone on the bridge can react, a surge of transporter energy engulfs Loki's quarters. It is a modified cloak-link transporter designed to bypass standard shield frequencies. Alarms sound across multiple decks. Worf orders countermeasures, but the Romulan technology slips between defensive layers like a blade through silk. Yet just as Loki's form begins to dematerialize, something goes wrong, at least for the Romulans. The beam fluctuates wildly, splitting into multiple streams, scattering echoes of Loki across different parts of the ship. For a moment, the Enterprise displays half a dozen Lokis appearing in hallways, engineering, and even the bridge simultaneously. The Romulans announce triumphantly that they have secured the target, but Worf's instruments show something strange. Loki is still aboard. In truth, Loki anticipated this. The Romulans' intentions were obvious long before the beam activated. He allowed the transporter to lock onto him, then twisted the beam mid-transfer using his magic. Instead of capturing him, the Romulans have taken a flawless illusion, programmed to behave, speak, and react exactly as Loki wants. That illusion now stands on the Romulan ship, appearing compliant and observant. Meanwhile, the real Loki remains on the Enterprise, perfectly unharmed. Picard realizes what has transpired, and though he disapproves of the trickery, he cannot deny its effectiveness. Loki appears in the observation lounge moments later, smirking with pride and a hint of relief. He tells them calmly that the Romulans have captured only his shadow, not his substance. The narrator highlights the growing shift. Loki's tricks are now serving the Enterprise, not undermining it. But the Romulans, believing themselves victorious, prepare their next move, unaware they have invited chaos aboard their own ship. Aboard the Romulan vessel, the illusionary Loki moves with perfect grace. He examines the corridors with mild interest, complimenting their engineering with flattering precision. Officers escort him proudly, unaware that every word he speaks, every sensor reading he views, every step he takes is feeding data back to the real Loki aboard the Enterprise. The illusion knows exactly what to do. Loki crafted it to be more than a simple copy. It can respond dynamically, improvising conversation and behavior while maintaining its role. It appears curious, cooperative, and respectful. To the Romulan commander, it seems they have gained a valuable asset. Meanwhile, Loki and Data work together in the Enterprise's observation lounge, studying the information flowing through the illusion's link. Loki projects images into the air, schematics of the Romulan ship, tactical maps, internal sensor feeds. Data organizes the data streams, creating predictive models for the Romulan vessel's responses. Their unexpected partnership is a strange harmony, magic shaping possibilities, logic refining them. Troy observes Loki from the far side of the room. She senses a subtle but undeniable shift within him. His emotions, usually layered like a maze, now hold pockets of sincerity. Not peace, not humility, but direction, a choice to stand with the Enterprise for reasons he does not yet admit aloud. She quietly informs Picard that Loki's alliance is no longer a matter of necessity. He is choosing it. This is the turning point. Loki's tricks are finally aligned with Starfleet's ethics. He is not using deception to dominate, but to defend, not to gain advantage, but to prevent war. Inside the Romulan ship, the illusion begins feeding false tactical data. Fake power signatures hint at vulnerabilities that do not exist. Phantom energy spikes suggest the Enterprise is on the brink of overload. The Romulans prepare to press their advantage, believing their enemy weak and their stolen asset compliant. But every move they make is part of Loki's plan. He strings them along with just enough truth to make the lies believable, guiding them into a trap where their aggression will be met with controlled, precise resistance. The narrator stresses the importance of this moment. Loki's greatest strength, his ability to deceive, is being used not to harm, but to shield. For the first time in his life, Loki's elaborate manipulation serves a higher purpose. Not redemption, not trust, just a choice, small but meaningful, to stand with the people who showed him respect instead of fear. This alliance, however unlikely, prepares the stage for the battle soon to unfold. The Romulans launch their assault with ruthless confidence, believing Loki secured and the Enterprise vulnerable. Three warbirds converge, their disruptors blazing emerald fire across the void. The first volley slams into the Enterprise's shields, rippling blue light across the hull. Picard orders evasive maneuvers, but the Romulan formation anticipates each shift. Then Loki gives Data the signal. With a flick of Loki's hand and a timed pulse from the Enterprise's projectors, the ship appears to split into three identical vessels. Three Enterprises glide through space in perfect formation, each casting identical sensor signatures, identical shield frequencies, identical warp fields. The illusion is so precise even the Enterprise's own instruments struggle to distinguish real from false. The Romulans falter, unable to target a single ship. Their formation breaks for a fraction of a second, just enough. Data coordinates phaser bursts with the illusionary flashes Loki produces. When one Phantom Enterprise appears to fire, the real phasers strike from another angle. The Romulans return fire at ghosts, hitting nothing but empty space. Their tactical readouts scramble as reality shifts around them. Worf uses the confusion with tactical precision. He does not target life support or hull integrity or main reactors. Instead, he fires carefully at weapon nodes, shield generators, and propulsion systems. Each shot disables without destroying. Each impact demonstrates overwhelming capability without inflicting fatal damage. The battle becomes a dance of deception and restraint. Loki manipulates perception. Data controls timing. Worf wields fire with honor. Even Picard, watching the coordinated display, feels the weight of what they are achieving, not victory by brute force, but with intelligence, illusion, and ethical discipline. A final illusion seals the outcome. Loki creates a massive projection of a warp core breach, the explosion wave radiating outward. The Romulans panic, pulling back abruptly to avoid the non-existent blast. In that moment of retreat, Worf fires disabling shots that cripple their propulsion systems one by one. In the aftermath, all three Romulan vessels drift helplessly, their weapons offline, their shields disabled, but their crews very much alive. The narrator highlights the key theme. Loki's illusions were once tools of manipulation, but today they saved lives. He has learned that deception, when guided by conscience, can be a shield instead of a sword. And the galaxy has just witnessed what happens when Starfleet discipline and Asgardian mischief unite. After the battle, the Enterprise settles into quiet repair mode. The glow of emergency lighting fades from the corridors, and engineering crews work to restore minor systems shaken during the fight. In the ready room, Picard waits, reviewing reports, but the atmosphere feels heavier than the damage would justify. When the door opens, Loki enters without fanfare. For the first time since arriving, he drops all glamours. His skin shifts to a deep frost blue, his eyes glow a pale icy shade, and his form expands slightly, revealing the truth of his frost giant heritage. It is not a disguise, not an illusion, but the self he rarely allows others to see. Picard stands but does not react with alarm or curiosity. He simply listens. Loki begins with hesitation. He speaks of his life in fragments at first, growing up adopted into a royal family, measuring himself against a brother who embodied everything noble, feeling judged before he committed a single crime. He describes betrayal both real and imagined, wounds inflicted not by blades but by expectations and comparisons. His voice remains steady, but the pain beneath it is unmistakable. He confesses that manipulation became his language because honesty never earned him respect. That conquest appealed to him because obedience never brought belonging, that every scheme, every lie, every act of rebellion grew from a desperate attempt to matter in a universe that seemed to choose him last. Picard does not interrupt. He does not defend Thor, nor criticize Loki, nor pretend to understand every nuance. He simply allows Loki to speak. Finally, Loki admits something he has never said aloud. He believed that power was the only path to worth, and that deception was the only power he truly controlled. He expected the Enterprise to fear him. Instead, they tried to understand him. And when he saw their trust in one another, trust he never experienced, something inside him shifted. He does not ask for forgiveness. He does not claim transformation. He simply says that helping the Enterprise felt right, not easy, not instinctive, but right. Picard responds with quiet clarity. Redemption is not a single act, nor a dramatic apology. It is a pattern of choices, small and steady. Loki's actions during the battle were one such choice, not absolution, but a beginning, a direction he can walk if he truly wishes to change. Loki absorbs these words silently, feeling their weight. For someone long imprisoned by his own self-worth, Picard's perspective feels like a door opening, one he can choose to walk through or turn away from. The narrator marks this moment as the emotional heart of the story. It mirrors the theme of worthiness from the reference script, but in a new way. Loki learns that worthiness is not measured by lineage, power, or perfection. It is measured by the courage to choose growth over ego, compassion over control, and sincerity over fear. For the first time in a long time, Loki leaves the room not with a smirk, but with purpose. The aftermath of the Romulan battle leaves the Enterprise buzzing with activity, crew members repairing damage, engineers recalibrating systems, and officers updating logs that will be studied by Starfleet for decades. Yet amid the noise, a quieter, more delicate project unfolds in the bowels of engineering, the creation of a bridge between dimensions. Data and Geordi stand together in front of a half-completed array of emitters and crystalline stabilizers. Loki's knowledge of interdimensional pathways has allowed them to reverse-engineer a controlled corridor, something akin to the Bifrost, but built through science rather than sorcery. It is not perfect. Even Loki admits that while the pathway can return him to his universe, it cannot guarantee where in his timeline he will land. The multiverse is too complex, too fluid to pinpoint. Still, it is enough to send him home, enough to offer a choice. Picard gathers the senior staff in the observation lounge once more. Loki stands at the far end of the table, looking oddly calm as Data presents the final calculations. The energy required is immense but manageable. The destination is uncertain but survivable, and once he steps through, the Enterprise will lose all contact with him forever. Picard turns to Loki and gives him two options. He may stay aboard the Enterprise as a monitored guest, allowed to learn, grow, and explore under Starfleet's guidance. Or he may return to his universe, face the consequences of his past misdeeds, and attempt to repair the damage he caused among people who once loved him and whom he once betrayed. It is not an easy choice. Staying on the Enterprise would be safe, comfortable even. Here he is treated with fairness, offered respect he never earned, and surrounded by people who show loyalty without manipulation. For a fractured soul like Loki, the Enterprise is a sanctuary unlike anything he has known. But sanctuaries, he realizes, are also temptations, and temptations lead him to stagnation. Picard watches Loki carefully, expecting debate or theatrics. But Loki simply stands there, staring at the stars outside the viewport. His voice, when it comes, is quiet. He chooses to go back. Not because he is ready, not because he is strong, but because growth means facing the hardest truths, not hiding behind the easiest comforts. If he truly wants to change, he must prove it where it matters most, among those he wronged, among the judgments he fears, among the shadows that shaped him. Troy senses the truth behind his words, fear, pride, longing, and hope all intertwined, but also resolve. The narrator highlights the core theme: real change does not happen in safety. It happens where the heart once faltered. Loki understands this now. Leaving the Enterprise is his first real act of courage. As preparations begin in the shuttle bay, the ship feels heavier, as though every deck senses the significance of the coming departure. Loki has become something no one expected, a mirror of their ideals, and a reminder that even the most broken souls can choose a different path. The shuttle bay glows with eerie, shimmering light as the interdimensional bridge comes online. The conduit rises like a pale echo of the Bifrost, a sleek, spiraling column of energy shaped by science, guided by Loki's knowledge, and stabilized by Data's precision. The hum of the corridor fills the vast space like a celestial heartbeat. The senior staff gather to see him off. Worf steps forward first. The Klingon warrior who once saw Loki only as a threat now nods with genuine respect. He acknowledges Loki as a warrior who fought with honor and showed restraint in battle. In Klingon culture, there is no higher praise. Loki bows slightly, admitting that Worf's discipline taught him that strength without purpose is chaos, something he understands now better than ever. Data approaches next with a mixture of curiosity and something close to admiration. He thanks Loki for expanding his understanding of identity, illusion, and authenticity. Loki, surprisingly gentle, tells Data that seeking humanity is a more noble quest than possessing power. Illusions can deceive others, but they cannot satisfy the self. Data's pursuit of selfhood inspired him in ways he did not expect. Troy offers a parting sentiment rooted in empathy. She wishes Loki courage, not in battle, but in facing the pain he carries without hiding behind masks or deception. Loki meets her gaze, recognizing in her the rare gift of seeing someone without judgment. He admits softly that the hardest battles he has ever fought were the ones against himself. Geordi gives him a respectful grin, noting that Loki's insights will advance Federation science for years. Dr. Crusher wishes him healing, both physical and emotional. Riker warns him, half amused and half serious, not to start any interdimensional wars, at least not without fair warning. Finally, Picard stands before him. No speech, no lecture, no command. He simply states that Loki's presence changed.